Discover the amazing transformation, how a 12-year-old girl left on the road found unexpected love. Ellie felt invisible, as though she was a ghost slipping through the narrow streets of her small Midwestern town. The whispers followed her everywhere, always accompanied by the shadow of her older brother, a local sports hero drenched in accolades while she remained merely average. The stares, the muted chuckles in the hallways, they'd carved deep grooves of frustration in her heart. One gray afternoon, the weight of the day drove her to a breaking point. An impulse ignited within her, urging her to flee the confines of mundanity, as she packed a backpack with snacks, her worn notebook, and that favorite pen. She slipped out of her front door, determined to find somewhere anywhere that she could truly shine. As Ellie walked down the dirt road, the endless expanse of cornfields stretched before her like an infinite blank page, mirroring the isolation that coiled tight within her chest. Each step felt heavy, uncertainties gnawed at her. What if nothing out there could fill the hollowness that was turning into despair? Would she be lost forever? Yet a flicker of excitement pulled her forward, even as the familiar comfort of home began to fade behind her. Just as doubt began to lay its heavy hand on her shoulder, she noticed Mr. Thompson perched on his rickety porch, a gentle smile breaking through the lines of his weathered face. "Hey there, little one. Got a long journey ahead?" he called out, the warmth of his voice cutting through the tension. Invitation glimmered in his eyes. With a hesitant nod, she let him lead her inside, where the scent of baked goods wafted through the air. In Mr. Thompson's modest home, he unveiled tales of his youth, sharing moments of lost dreams all crushed under the pressure of expectations. Each word resonated with Ellie, who felt seen for the first time. The payoff of her quiet existence was now manifesting before her. He listened patiently as she poured her thoughts into that old notebook, encouraging her to let the words take flight. Writing became her sanctuary, her voice rising like a thunderstorm. Each story she shared echoed with intensity in the cozy stillness of his home. And yet, as the hours trickled away, shadows from her past slithered back in. The echoes of derogatory remarks from classmates haunted her, bubbling to the surface at the most inconvenient times. Thoughts of her brother's achievements suffocated her newfound solace. Torn between the safety of Mr. Thompson's home and the alluring familiarity of her own life, she spiraled deeper into doubt. Just as frustration threatened to unravel her burgeoning identity, she stumbled onto a hidden journal belonging to her grandmother. As she leafed through its pages, inspiration flooded her soul, revealing a legacy of resilience that coursed through her veins. Before Ellie could fully grasp the power within her newfound creativity, her phone rang, slicing through the fragile bubble she decrafted. It was her brother, frantic, searching for the sister he feared he'd lost. The tight coil of guilt twisted in her gut. Torn between the magnetizing draw and recognition she found in Mr. Thompson's nurturing presence and the loyalty she felt toward her family, she hesitated. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The call intensified the weight on her heart. Should she return to the world designed for her brother, or cling to the spark of recognition that was finally blossoming within her? Ellie's mind raced before her, spinning in chaotic uncertainty. She could surrender to the demands of family or take a stand for her own dreams, yet that line divided her soul in two. The moment tightened as a storm brewed in her chest, and she clutched her phone, knowing the choice she faced would propel her life down two vastly different paths. Would she reclaim her identity, or let the echoes of expectation drown her newfound passion? Ellie stood in a vortex of emotion, teetering on the edge of decision as her brother's frantic voice echoed in her ears. Each syllable felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, urging her to retreat to the familiar comfort of family. But the pool of creativity and self-discovery vibrated within her, tempting her to forge a different path. In that moment, clarity sliced through the confusion. She had a passion, the ink and pages awaited her, ready to capture her voice. With a deep breath, she silenced the echoes of doubt. She would not allow guilt to dictate her journey. "I'll call him back," she murmured to herself, gathering a thread of resolve. It was time to explore her identity. The voice she had long suppressed struggled to emerge. It urged her to embrace her unique narrative, one that could stand apart from the shadow of her brother's achievements. In Mr. Thompson's living room, she resumed writing, unburdening herself of the weight that had shackled her spirit. As words flowed, her apprehension began to lift, like a fog rolling away under the sun's first rays. Each sentence she penned resonated with the vigor of her newfound determination. She wrote about girls like herself, extraordinary in their ordinary lives, who found the strength to declare their stories. Days passed unnoticed in the service of her art. With each completed piece, she felt the edges of her identity sharpen, but the stakes were high. The initial thrill of discovery was laced with fear. What would happen when she finally confronted her family? Would they understand her need to carve out her place? Or would they insist she blink back into the shadows like before? Late one night, scribbling under a flickering desk lamp, Ellie stumbled upon a thought that sent a jolt through her. She could craft a narrative that intertwined her own journey with those of the strong woman from the pages of her grandmother's journal. A tale of resilience rooted in truth and experience. The realization dawned upon her: she was not just writing for herself, but potentially for countless others caught in the same web of expectation. This revelation fueled her soul, pushing her further. But the intoxicating power of creation was soon met with the haunting realization that she would have to face her brother again. The comfort she found in Mr. Thompson's home reminded her that allowing herself to be vulnerable could create the most meaningful moments in life. Yet, tethered by fear, she couldn't shake the dread of untangling the complex web of family loyalty and self-fulfillment. The tension coiled tighter, fraying the edges of her resolve as she prepared herself for the inevitable reunion. Deep down, Ellie craved the connection with her brother but feared the disappointment in his eyes if she strayed from the path defined for her. Would she be seen as selfish for wanting more than what her family envisioned? Would she ever be more than just the sister of the star athlete? As she faced her reflection in the mirror, determination met vulnerability. With grit, she steadied her breath and realized that her journey couldn't blossom without the confrontation that awaited. The words she wrote were calling out into the universe, but they required confrontation with the very family dynamic that had stifled her for so long. Ellie hit dial on her phone, ready to bridge the gap between two worlds. As the phone rang, she thought, this is only the beginning. The call echoed through her mind, each ring a reminder that she was about to step fully into her identity. But as her brother picked up, a new shadow flickered in her heart. The real question was, once she revealed her true self, would their bond become stronger, or would it shatter under the weight of unshared dreams? "Ellie, hey. I didn't expect to hear from you," her brother's voice rang through the speaker, sounding upbeat, caught completely unaware of the storm brewing within her. "Hi, Mark," she managed, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The casualness of his tone magnified her anxiety. How could she shatter the facade of their comfortable sibling rapport? Would he still see her as his little sister after unveiling her passions? "How's it going?" he continued, oblivious to the struggle spinning in her mind. The urge to revert to the soft, safe role she had always inhabited flared up. But the realization of her own strength glinted a little brighter. She knew this was a pivotal moment, one that could either cement her newly forged identity or send her spiraling back into the shadows. "I've been working on something," she began, uncertainty lacing her voice. "It's about my writing. I want to share my stories with the world." Each word felt like a tentative step into a cold lake, testing the waters of his reaction. There was a pause on the other end, and Ellie's heart raced. Mark's laugh eventually broke the silence. That's cool. You've always been good with words. Remember when you wrote that poem in 5th grade? You blew everyone away. A warmth flooded her chest, but it was quickly dampened by the familiar shadow of doubt. Would he see this as a fleeting whim or something truly meaningful? She pressed on, determined to navigate deeper waters. Yeah, but it feels different this time. I've really been exploring who I am, and I want to write about girls like me, about their journeys, their strength. As she spoke, she could almost feel the words crystallizing around her thoughts, taking shape and structure. This wasn't merely an attempt at proud storytelling, it was a revelation about her own sense of self nested within the narratives of others. Mark's voice softened. That's an ambitious project, Ellie. I'm proud of you. Just make sure you still come to my games, okay? I need you cheering me on. A pang of guilt washed over her, reminiscent of the echoes that had haunted her earlier. Pitting her life's ambitions against familiar loyalty felt daunting. Would he truly understand that while she wanted to support him, she also craved her own spotlight? Of course, she quickly replied, though doubt lingered. It was a promise wrapped in apprehension. Maybe I could help you with it, he suggested. We could brainstorm some ideas together. You know, about fighting expectations and all that. It would be fun. Sure. Ellie's agreement emerged cautiously. The thought of collaboration was both exciting and terrifying. Was she ready to share not just her stories, but the profound emotions embedded within them? Great. I'll grab some coffee later, and we can chat, Mark added, light-heartedly, but Ellie felt a twinge of unease. The more she shared, the more vulnerable she became. Would he expect her writing to align with his understanding of her world? As the call ended, Ellie felt the buoyant high of connection brushing against the heavy cloud of fear. Her brother's support flooded her heart, yet dread still lurked. How would she introduce the notion of gender and freedom in her narratives? The bold journey towards commercializing her craft called for profound decisions about courage and vulnerability. Setting her phone down, Ellie turned back to her notebook, searching for clarity to articulate her journey, and the grappling shreds of her insecurities began to weave themselves into the very fabric of her writing. Again, she faced a crossroad. The comfort of potential collaboration with her brother contrasted sharply with the trepidation of unveiling her true self. As she pressed the pen to the page, a spark born of admiration blended with trepidation ignited within her. What if his support hinged on her remaining in the shadows of his glory? The deeper she ventured into her writing, the more she risked her relationship with him. Was it worth the cost? A realization dawned, the power to uncover her truth lied within her grasp, yet it required unrelenting courage. Would she brave the confrontation awaiting her in the next meeting? And as she scribbled down this inquiry, clarity dawned. She was stepping onto an uncharted path, one filled with uncertainty yet glistening with potential. The next challenge loomed, how to maintain her identity while navigating the complex layers of family dynamics as she sought to redefine herself. What revelations would arise as she and Mark engaged in their vulnerable dance of discovery? Would they emerge strengthened or transformed? Ellie couldn't shake the gnawing apprehension as she slumped back in her chair, fingers drumming on the edge of her notebook. The pages lay blank, a stark reflection of her internal chaos. She had shared a glimpse of her dreams with Mark, a monumental step, yet the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on her shoulders. That morning, as she walked the familiar path to the coffee shop, her heartbeat syncopated with her thoughts. How would she articulate the nuances of her identity within her stories? What would she reveal about herself, and in turn, about her brother? Would he even grasp the complexities she intended to weave into her narratives? The world outside bustled around her, students rushed to class, business people scurried to meetings, and forgotten dreams colored the chilly morning air with a palpable tension. But for Ellie, this moment felt monumental. She stepped inside the cozy cafe, the aroma of roasted beans wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. Mark sat at a corner table, the warmth of his easygoing smile easing her initial discomfort. Yet, the mix of excitement and fear sparked in her gut, igniting the struggle between her desire for honesty and her urge to shield everything she loved. "Hey, Ellie. Ready to brainstorm?" he greeted enthusiastically, pulling her from her thoughts. "Hey," she replied, mustering a genuine grin as she pulled out her chair. As they chatted, she found herself glancing at her notebook, gripping it tightly as reminders of her unvoiced thoughts plagued her. Mark droned on about his team and their upcoming game, but her thoughts drifted to the myriad stories buzzing behind her eyes. "Mark," she interrupted, her heart pumping. The words felt thick on her tongue. "What do you think it means to be brave?" He paused, taken slightly aback. "Brave? I guess it's about facing fears, like charging into the end zone even when you're scared of the hit." His response was simple, yet penetrating. Was that all it took? Venturing into unknown territory as she intended? Would being brave ever mean being honest about your feelings? Mark raised his eyebrows, his playful demeanor fading, replaced by curiosity. "Yeah, definitely. Why do you ask?" "I've been thinking about my writing. About honesty in stories. It's not just about the words I put down. It's about vulnerability. I want to write real stories about girls facing their fears like mine." She inhaled deeply, the next words bubbling up. "But I'm scared that I'll end up losing people I care about along the way." "Ellie, you're not going to lose me. You're not just a little sister anymore. You're a storyteller. If anything, I'll respect you more if you're true to yourself." His words enveloped her with warmth, but doubt still crept in. Would he really stand firm with her as she reveled in the shadows of uncomfortable truths? She had touched on the raw edges of her vulnerability, but still felt unsteady. Dipping a hand into the pocket of her coat, she retrieved a note, a bit of encouragement from herself written a week ago. "Remember, you are enough." The words felt more meaningful now, their urgency amplified. With a resolve born from clarity, she slid the note across the table. "I've got to do this, Mark. I need to understand who I am, even if it means digging deep and putting it all on the line. Are you with me?" His expression softened, eyes scanning her face with a mix of pride and concern, and she felt the walls of their sibling dynamic shift ever so slightly. "Always, Ellie. I just want you to be happy." For the first time, she saw not just her brother sitting across from her, but an ally in this battle of self-discovery. The conversation flowed freely now, mapping out ideas for her stories while negotiating the tender territory of familiar loyalty. But with each shared idea came the realization that she would have to confront the demons lurking in her past and present. As they wrapped up, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of her journey towards self-acceptance and the relationships that could either bolster or hinder her flight. Upon returning home, she opened her notebook, the blank pages now a canvas for her burgeoning identity. Written across the top, she penned, "To be brave is to dare to share." But the deeper she ventured into this exploration, the more the question lingered: how would balancing her truth with the expectations of those she loved affect the delicate fabric of their connection? Tomorrow would bring the next chapter, and with it, the ultimate decision: would she embrace her truth, unfurling her wings in the process, or retreat back into safe, shadowed corners? The thrill of discovery buzzed within her. It was time to face the world she had always feared and write her way into the future. What revelations awaited her in those untamed territories? Would she find the courage to transform not only herself, but her relationships in the wake of her newfound voice? Ellie awoke the next morning to soft rays of light filtering through her curtains, illuminating the quiet chaos of her room. It felt as though the sunlight called her forth, urging her to manifest the thoughts that had danced in her mind throughout the night. With renewed determination, she sat at her desk, resisting the familiar urge to hesitate. Her notebook awaited her, the blank pages like a stage set for the performance of her life. She opened it to the first blank page and wrote, "Discovery starts with honesty." Even as the ink flowed, she could feel the weight of her truth gathering like a storm cloud above her, threatening to break but waiting for the right moment. Instead of overwhelming fear, she felt an odd comfort in contemplating the stories she would tell. They would be infused with her own truth, the emotional echoes of her brother, her childhood insecurities, the tug-of-war between public perception and private reality. With each letter she penned, she realized this was more than writing, it was an act of reclaiming her narrative. After a few hours of writing, she abruptly paused. The tangles of her past loomed larger, compelling her thoughts away from creative expression. Doubts clawed at her, whispering menacingly, what if she spoke truths that others weren't ready to hear? What if her vulnerability invited rejection instead of connection? Ellie put down her pen and rubbed her temples. Mark's earlier words echoed in her mind, but fresh anxieties bubbled to the surface. She thought of their family's dynamics, the unspoken tensions, the sacrifices made, the deeply buried emotions that lay below the surface. In acknowledging her own fears, would she risk unraveling the threads holding them together? Pacing her room, she wrestled with a decision. Perhaps she needed to confront the deepest challenge of all, to voice her truth amidst the competing narratives of her family. This could be the key to her transformation, not only as a writer but as a sister, a daughter, and eventually, herself. With a jolt of inspiration, she thought about speaking her truth to her brother. Instead of seeing it as a threat, she could frame it as an invitation to deeper understanding. Perhaps they could have a dialogue rather than a confrontation. Mark had always encouraged her thoughts, hadn't he? She recalled his supportive smile, the way it sparked something inside her. With renewed purpose, she dashed a new note on the same page, to be brave is to engage in dialogue, to listen and to speak. A soft chuckle escaped her lips as she realized that the act of sharing her stories could also deepen her relationship with Mark, not sever it. Her fear began to morph into excitement. Determined to bring her ideas to life, she set out for the coffee shop again. This time, it felt like a pilgrimage rather than a fraught venture. As she walked through the vibrant streets, she began to envision conversations not just between Mark and herself, but with all the characters who would emerge from her stories. Each step heightened her anticipation. Arriving at the cafe, she spotted Mark at their usual table, his head buried in his phone. She couldn't help but smile at the image of him, wholly absorbed, yet aware enough to look up when she approached. "Hey there," he called, a welcoming grin spreading across his features. "Hi, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation." Ellie could feel her heart racing as anticipation flickered within her. "Ready for round 2? He teased, but she could tell he sensed the shift in her demeanor. "Actually, I want to talk about my writing, but more importantly, I want to share some of my fears and thoughts. It's time I let you in on everything. There's a lot I want to say." As Mark leaned forward, the warmth in his eyes encouraged her. In that second, she felt something shift within her, confidence igniting amidst vulnerability. The stakes were higher now, but she was ready to confront them. With every word shared between them, they would carve out their truth. What would rise from this invitation to honesty? Would Ellie's stories bring their shared experiences into the light, or would it dim the brightness of their brother-sister bond? With the future unfathomably rich with possibilities, Ellie could hardly wait to write the next line. As Ellie settled into the familiar cafe chair across from Mark, a flurry of emotions surged within her, a potent mix of fear, excitement, and the pulse of anticipation. The noise of the cafe faded into a comforting hum as she focused on her brother, who leaned in, eager to listen. She felt his encouraging gaze, reinforcing the growing belief she had in herself. "I want to tell you about my writing," she began, her voice a blend of vulnerability and determination. "But more than that, I need to share what it's been like for me. I've been holding back, trying to fit into a mold that doesn't feel true, and now it's time for honesty." Mark nodded, a reassuring smile on his lips, encouraging her to continue. There was no mockery in his expression, only a genuine willingness to understand. His presence fortified her resolve. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her truths press against her chest, ready to be unleashed. "Growing up, I often felt like I was shadowed by our family dynamics. I held on to so many stories of happiness but also those of fears and tensions. I thought that by glossing over them, I was protecting us, but instead, it just kept me silent." Mark's brow furrowed with curiosity. "What do you mean by that? I always thought you were happy." Ellie chuckled softly, almost bitterly. "Happy, yes, but it was more like a mask. I've been worried about what revealing my real feelings would do to those closest to me." "Like me?" Mark's tone was laced with concern. She could see him searching for answers within her words. "Yes, exactly. You were always my sounding board and my confidant, but I didn't want to burden you with my internal struggles. I was convinced it would damage our relationship. That's why I haven't shared more of my writing, fearing it might shift our dynamic." His expression softened. "Ellie, open dialogue is what keeps relationships strong. We can't grow unless we share our truths. I want to hear all of it, not just the good parts." Each word seemed to break through invisible barriers within her. This was not just a discussion about writing, it was a broader exchange about their lives, their bond, and a new understanding. "Okay," she said, swallowing complicating emotions, "one story I've been reluctant to share is about when I felt invisible in our family. I used to think that if I didn't perform perfectly, if I didn't excel at everything, then I wasn't worthy of love or attention." Mark leaned closer, his expression encouraging and intent. "You were never invisible to me, you know that." Ellie felt a rush of gratitude. "I know. But it's not just about you, it's about everything, our parents, expectations. I felt I had to be this perfect Ellie to earn my place, which made me second-guess my real self." "It's understandable," he said cautiously. "You've got to remember that family isn't about perfection. It's human and messy. The truth is, I felt pressure too, from different angles. But that is part of being siblings. That's why I want to write this all down," she said, her voice steadier now. "To create a space for us all. I think the stories can release those pressures and maybe even heal some things." As fear morphed into clarity, Ellie felt a spark of something she hadn't truly believed in before: empowerment. Telling Mark was not merely sharing her thoughts, it was about acknowledging her own worth and redefining her role in their family narrative. Mark reached out and squeezed her hand. "You're onto something monumental, Ellie. Embracing our truths can genuinely change how we see each other, too. I believe it can deepen our bond." She returned his squeeze, warmed by his words. But even as hope flooded her, the specter of resistance lingered. As they exchanged stories and fears, an unsettling thought crept into her mind. If this revelation could strengthen her relationship with Mark, would it also expose long-buried resentments within their family? "Do you think Mom and Dad are ready for this?" she asked, suddenly wary. The time had come to face them, to confront the stories that shaped us. "Whether they are ready or not is a different battle," Mark replied, his eyes locking onto hers. With that, Ellie glanced down at her notebook, filled with notes and sketches of what she hoped to share. The path was becoming clearer, yet the complications of unveiling their shared history loomed closer. Would she muster the courage to face everyone and share these truths, or would the weight of unspoken words once again clench around her throat? As uncertainty lingered in the air, the question danced in her mind: what would happen when she took the next step towards unveiling their family's complexities? The moment hung, laden with tension, begging for resolution. She could hardly wait to draft the next chapter of their unfolding story. Ellie felt the world outside the cafe blur into a backdrop as she mulled over Mark's words. Moments of clarity seemed rare, but here, enveloped in the kindness of their conversation, she sensed a catalyst brewing within her. After their discussion, she knew what she faced next wouldn't just be a walk down memory lane, it would be a confrontation of the realities that shaped who she was. She felt the familiar heaviness in her stomach, anxiety mingling with a freshly discovered determination. What unspoken truths lurked within her parents that she must now confront? As they wrapped up their coffee, she couldn't escape the gnawing thought that her family's dynamics could splinter further in the wake of her revelations. Would honesty breed understanding, or would it awaken old wounds? Later at home, Ellie sat on her bed, reviewing her notebook filled with raw thoughts and fragmented stories. Each line trembled with the weight of unspoken truths. What if sharing meant dismantling the foundations her family had built? She shivered at the thought. Yet, as she began drafting one of her more poignant pieces, about a birthday from her childhood, she found a thread of confidence weaving through her fears. The memories began flooding back, years of events tinged with laughter, secrets, and the subtle shadows of discontent. Reflecting on her 12th birthday, she remembered the stunning cake her mother had proudly baked, adorned with colorful frosting, yet the day had felt void of genuine connection. Her mother had been preoccupied, her father distracted with work emails, and Ellie felt again that familiar pulse of loneliness, overshadowed by her desire to please. The paradox intrigued her. The cake, a symbol of her family's love, stood in stark contrast to the emptiness she felt. These contradictions begged for exploration, and Ellie understood this depth was what she wanted to capture. Capturing it on paper could unveil both her family's flaws and their love, challenging readers' perceptions of perfection. But what if her words cut too deep? Would her parents recognize their reflections? Would they embrace the discomfort, or turn away, unable to face the cracks in their facade? Ellie exhaled slowly, her heart racing. She could already sense the conversations that lay ahead, the potential arguments that could ignite when laying bare the bits of untrammeled family history and hurt. Yet the very thought of transformation pulled her forward, an irresistible urge to embrace the messiness of her reality rather than shy away from it. Later that evening, after tossing restlessly in bed, she decided she would place everything she had into this project. It wasn't merely about finding her voice, it was about reclaiming her identity and creating a legacy, not just for her immediate family, but one that reverberated outside their walls. Then, like a bolt of electricity, a new idea struck her: what if she could frame her narratives not just as stories about her family but as a dialogue? The notion of including their perspectives fascinated her, igniting the possibility of collaboration rather than confrontation. This approach allowed her to imagine not just writing from her truth but transforming it into a collective story, one that opened the door for family discussions. Could their shared narratives create a bridge between her parents' experiences and hers, fostering understanding and growth? In that moment, determination took root within her. She would not shy away from this daunting task, instead, she embraced it fully. She sat up, energized by a sudden wave of clarity about her writing's purpose, not only for herself but potentially for her family, too. As dawn lightened the horizon, Ellie felt the urgency of her personal journey converging with her novel's unfolding. Each choice, each word carried the power to unearth hidden layers and promote healing. The next question loomed, thick in her mind: would she dare to introduce this concept to Mark, or was this vision still too fragile to reveal? Her heart pulsed with excitement and dread, a blend that whispered of the inevitable confrontation awaiting her at home. How would her parents respond when faced with their own reflections? With her pen poised, Ellie realized that the moment to face her family was not just approaching, it was a necessary leap into the unknown. Would her willingness to expose their personal narratives lead to liberation or devastation? The uncertainty echoed around her like a haunting refrain, demanding resolution. Ellie dipped her pen into the inkwell of her thoughts, ready to articulate her ideas with precision. She had never felt this nerve-wracking determination before. Rather than stifling her, it sparked clarity. Her project no longer seemed like a burden but an opportunity, a chance to redefine not just her story but the narratives entrenched in her family's history. As the sun brightened her room, she envisioned her parents during their many conversations, often shrouded in layers of unsaid feelings. What if she began with simple inquiries? How did you feel during your childhood? What were your parents like? She questioned whether their responses could unveil deeper insights into their motivations and fears, softening the confrontation that loomed. After breakfast, Ellie summoned her courage and walked into the living room where her parents sat engrossed in their usual morning routine. This felt familiar, an everyday tableau painted with routine comfort, yet beneath that veneer was an undercurrent of tension. She knew now that she had to disrupt the cycle. "Can we talk?" They paused, surprised, glancing at each other before returning their attention to her, the moment thick with unspoken reservations. Her heart raced. Here was the moment where dialogue could either enhance their bond or fracture their already delicate connections. "About family. About us." Ellie started, her voice steady yet soft. Each word felt like stepping onto shaky ground, but she realized she craved authentic conversation. "I want to write about our experiences, what it means to be a family, to love each other. But I need your help." Silence enveloped the room, a brief suspense that felt like an eternity. Her mother frowned, the lines around her mouth deepening, and her father's brow furrowed. Ellie felt a surge of apprehension. Did her request seem too much? She pressed on. "I think our stories are more powerful when shared. I want to explore the good and not so good moments. It could be healing." She took a deep breath, the weight of vulnerability crafting a raw energy around her. Both parents exchanged uneasy glances. "Ellie," her father began, scratching the back of his head. "What do you mean by not so good moments?" "Mom, Dad, I remember feeling disconnected, even on my birthday, when you both were there yet so far away." Ellie infused a soft pleading into her tone. The past sparked alive in the room, and she could see their hearts racing to respond, caught in the tension of reliving past regrets. "What are you trying to do?" Her mother's voice wavered between concern and indignation. "Are you planning to air our dirty laundry?" "No." Ellie almost shouted, feeling an unexpected desperation. "I want to understand. I want to write a truthful reflection of our family, a complete picture, both the joy and the pain. I think it is important." A shift in the atmosphere hinted at the rift unfolding before her. She understood now that honesty wasn't merely a tactic for writing, it held the potential to harness the truths buried deep within their beings. Would they open the door? I want us to connect," Ellie added, softer now, allowing vulnerability to seep into her words. Her heart ached in anticipation of their response, knowing this dialogue might strip away the layers of comfort they clung to. After what felt like a century, her father cleared his throat. "We didn't know you felt that way," he admitted, taking a tentative step into the light of introspection. "And if we did, would we want to revisit those conversations?" Her mother's question echoed, laden with an unspoken fear woven into the fabric of their family's narrative. Ellie understood this pause was monumental. The seeds of dialogue had been planted, yet the growth of their interaction remained uncertain. Could they cultivate a space where reflection was welcomed, not feared? Would her courage be met with their willingness to confront the past? Determined, she realized she had taken the first step. But what lay ahead depended on the depth of their willingness to share. As she retreated to her room, pulse racing, Ellie felt alive with possibility. Yet beneath the exhilaration remained the question, could honesty carve paths to healing, or was it too late to change? The stakes had grown more profound, the outcome less determined. What lay ahead weighed heavily on her, a battlefield of silence and the prospect of genuine understanding. She could feel it brewing, a confrontation that would test their family's very foundation. Just as she picked up her pen again, a deeper fear gripped her. Was she prepared for the consequences of this awakening? Ellie sat at her cluttered desk, the afternoon light streaming through her window and casting a warm glow on the scattered papers around her. She felt a mix of exhilaration and apprehension as she stared at her blank notebook. The conversation with her parents had ignited a spark within her, but now, she was confronted by the weight of expectation, both self-imposed and familial. The words needed to flow, but would they reflect the raw truth she sought? Determined to define her project more clearly, she made a list of potential topics. It ranged from childhood memories to conflicts and the unresolved feelings surrounding them. Each point seemed richer than the last, yet the enormity of the task loomed over her. She frowned as doubt crept into her thoughts. What if they refused to share? What if the revelations only deepened their disconnect rather than heal it? With a deep breath, she turned to a blank page. Writing had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could articulate thoughts and craft narratives without judgment. Today, it would also serve as a pathway to dialogue. She penned down her motivations. I want to understand our story. I want to know why we feel this way. She felt a sense of agency as she acknowledged her vulnerabilities on the page. Rather than wallowing in her fears, she decided to channel them into action. If she wanted to navigate the conversations ahead, she needed to outline specific questions for each family member. She'd frame them to encourage openness. She imagined asking her mother about her own childhood. Did you ever feel isolated, too? As she crafted the questions, she recognized her past reluctance to confront these issues. Every time her parents brushed off her concerns, Ellie had retreated, believing it was easier not to dig deeper. But now, the path was clear. She would not shy away from discomfort. She would confront her fears head-on, starting with her own expectations. Later that evening, she found herself sitting with her parents in the dim light of the living room. The air was charged with anticipation. The space between them thrummed with an unspoken agreement that the discussions would continue. Ellie decided to lead firmly yet lightly. Can we try another conversation? She asked, glancing between them. They nodded hesitantly, but neither offered words. Ellie took a deep breath. I've thought about what we talked about earlier. I want us to share our stories. It doesn't have to be perfect or easy, but I want to listen. Her father rubbed a hand on the back of his neck, the familiar gesture signaling his internal conflict. It's just raw, Ellie. Some of those moments are hard to talk about. We don't need to fix everything, she replied, attempting to reassure them. Just sharing how we felt could help us feel more connected. Fear ebbed slightly. They desired connection as much as she did, yet the road to it was fraught with memories they feared would reopen wounds. As the discussion continued, each parent gradually revealed snippets of their own childhood experiences. It was awkward at first. Their voices trembled, revealing the brittleness that years of avoidance had created. However, the unease morphed into a tentative understanding, as if Ellie were leading them through a dimly lit tunnel toward recognition. They spoke of dreams deferred and painful moments, turning points in their lives. In those fragile moments, Ellie felt a sense of power wash over her. This was truth-telling in its rawest form. She was unearthing layers nobody intended to reveal. It wasn't just about her. This was a family entangled in complex histories, each member grappling with how to move forward from the past. By the time their discussion concluded, a shared tears, not of sadness but of recognition, breached the gap between past and present. Ellie realized that the emotional exchange was exactly what she had needed, a shared narrative of voices participating in their own healing. As she returned to her desk that night, her heart swelled with a mix of pride and trepidation. This was just the beginning. While she felt empowered by their willingness to engage, she also sensed the deeper reckonings that awaited them. She had merely scratched the surface, and the raw, vulnerable truths lay ahead, waiting to be uncovered. She picked up her pen once more, but instead of writing, she found herself staring at the page. Questions whirred in her mind: what else might she learn? What latent fears could they still confront? Her heart raced at the thought of what loomed ahead. Would the revelations facilitate healing, or would they fracture the fragile bond she had only just begun to knit back together? With a sudden rush of adrenaline, she pondered her next step. Would they be ready for the truths buried in their hearts, or would silence reassert itself? The morning sun poured through Ellie's window, illuminating the scattered pages of her notebook filled with untold stories, sketches of hopes, and notes from her spirited conversations with Mark and their parents. She had opened doors to moments long hidden away. A metamorphosis had begun. But as she contemplated her next steps, a familiar nervousness tightened in her chest. Would her family embrace the process of sharing their stories as she did? Would the truth pave the way for connection, or would it elicit defensiveness? Sitting down at her desk, she resolved to make her family's journey a collaborative one. As her pen glided across the page, she listed the main themes she wished to explore: resilience, acceptance, and, most importantly, vulnerability. Each word resonated with newfound strength, stitching together the diverse facets of their experiences. Her experiences. Later, as Ellie prepared for yet another candid discussion, she felt a wave of determination. She gathered her family in the living room, the same space where they had shared their apprehensions, and prepared herself to deepen the exploration of their narratives. She placed her pen and notebook on the coffee table, symbols of her commitment and authenticity. "I want us to share not just the good moments, but the struggles as well," she began, her heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. "Each of us has a story filled with triumphs and failures. I believe writing them down can help us understand each other better and perhaps even reshape how we interact." Her mother's brow furrowed, a mixture of worry and curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean, Ellie? Are you prepared for what might come up?" The inherent tension was palpable, but so was the opportunity for healing. "I am," she affirmed, pushing through the fear. "I believe exposing our vulnerabilities could cultivate a solidarity we didn't think we needed. I think we discover how interconnected our experiences are." Mark nodded in support, and Ellie felt bolstered by his presence. As hesitant eyes turned toward her, she pushed forward. "We're not here to point fingers or assign blame. I just want to create a space where our stories collide, and with that collision, I hope for understanding and growth." As conversations began to flow, her parents uncorked memories buried beneath years of hesitation. They began to recount their own childhoods, their struggles and triumphs, the burdens they carried into their adult lives, and the silent walls they built around their feelings. Each revelation poured out like a river breaking free from a dam. Ellie felt every word wash over her, honoring the struggles that had been elided through silence. Their shared vulnerability replaced apprehension with connection, a resonance she craved deeply. The heavy burden of expectation began to lift, allowing room for authenticity to breathe. After hours of probing conversation, Ellie felt transformed. A surge of satisfaction coursed through her veins. The stories they shared illuminated a tapestry woven with rich complexity. Their laughter mingled with sorrow, and in the aftermath of raw expression, she witnessed how deeply they each yearned for understanding. As the discussion came to a close, Ellie looked around the room, feeling the gravity of this journey. What had started as a timid exploration of her identity had morphed into a tangible project, one that brought her family closer. It was clear that the act of sharing had altered them all, piercing the facade that often obscured family dynamics. In this crucible of honesty, she felt validated and strengthened. Now, each member of her family was tasked with courage, enduring a classic American challenge of facing every raw nerve and unspoken pain. They were no longer actors in each other's lives, but co-authors in a story that held the potential for transformative growth. Days passed, and Ellie poured her insight onto the pages with fervor, each word crafted with the intention of unearthing powerful realities. In the swirl of her narrative, she felt a sense of competency blooming. She was becoming an advocate for the voiceless, that little sister who once floundered in the shadows of expectations. Weeks later, as she shared her completed narrative with her family, they embraced her with open arms, both in words and actions. Their understanding cemented bonds that had once felt frayed, and in them, Ellie recognized the strength of acceptance, both her own and theirs. The triumph was palpable. Ellie had grappled her fears, held them tightly, and transformed them into stories that did not just share her experiences but illuminated the universality within them. She demonstrated that discovery, reflection, and growth were not only individual pursuits but pathways toward empathetic relationships. Ellie sat back at her desk, the notebook now filled with the mosaic of her family's transformations. The sense of accomplishment surged through her, once again a confidence she had long yearned for. The pulsating rhythm of her heart matched the pulse of ambition she had reinvigorated. This journey was far from over, it was merely the foundation of an unfolding chapter. She had carved her place not just as a burgeoning writer, but as an integral member of a family willing to engage in dialogue, to embrace authenticity, and to transform in the wake of honesty. As she smiled at the words she penned, every phrase was a testament to her journey toward fulfillment. Ellie had finally found her voice, and now, she was ready to share that voice with the world. If you've reached the end of this inspiring transformation, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Remember to leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others can discover similar stories of personal growth. Comment your reactions and theories about Ellie's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.